So I got a couple requests from viewers asking me what my favorite linear switches were, and if I could make a switch comparison video or tier list. If you've been following the channel, you would know that I originally preferred tactile switches, but slowly evolved over to liking linear switches. Throughout my time in keyboards, I've tried out and gathered quite a few linear switches, more than I should have. So I wanted to make this video to help those of you looking to try new switches or just learn more about various switches. I think trying out new switches is always fun, and it is one of the biggest features in changing how your keyboard feels and sounds. But before we begin, I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe, as it helps the channel, and check me out in my socials down below. Before I introduce you to the switches on hand with me today, I want to set a few conditions to make this comparison fair. I've seen a lot of switch reviews in the past where they give a switch score of like 8.2 out of 10, and I'm just like, what does that even mean? It is really hard to give a numerical value to something so subjective, as your 8.2 on a switch is probably different from my 8.2. So instead, we'll be using ordinal values today to compare these switches. What that means is that instead of giving the smoothest switch a score of like 9.5 and the least smooth switch of like 6.3, which can be very vague and could mean anything, we'll be ranking the switches from 1 to 6, with 1 being the smoothest and 6 being the least smooth. I've also decided to do this with modded switches instead of using stock switches. The reason for this is because at the end of the day, we're going to be using these switches in its best form in our keyboards. We wouldn't want like a pre-Super Saiyan Goku fighting a regular Naruto not in Sage mode. We want to see them at its full power, and that's the same for me with these switches. Another condition that I set consistent are the lube and switch film. I've also seen reviews in the past where they have different lubes on switches, or have some switches filmed and some not. I think that this creates more variables in the test, and we want to level the playing field to keep it consistent. For this test, I used Krytox 205 Grade 0 in every switch with the same lubing technique, and TX keyboard switch films in all but one switch. So moving on, let's introduce our candidates. First up, we have Gateron Milky Yellows, which are often known as the best budget linear. A lot of people, almost like anyone, sells these switches, and the price is around 25 cents per switch, with the spring weight having an actuation of 55 grams and bottom out of 63.5 grams. Next up is Cherry MX Blacks. These have been around forever and are considered an OG pretty much. Availability wise, they're also sold by a lot of vendors, and the price ranges from around 35 cents to 39 cents per switch, with the spring weight having an actuation of 60 grams and bottom out of 80 grams. Next up, we have the C3 Tangerines. Some people call them the Sriracha switches because of their colors, and they're sold by the KAILH company, and their price comes from 60 cents per switch, with the spring weight having a bottom out of 62 grams or 67 depending on your stem color. Next, we have the NovelKeys Dry Yellow switches. These are another JWK recolors, which we had a lot this past year. Availability wise, they're sold on NovelKeys, with the price being around 55 cents per switch, with spring weight having an actuation of 45 grams and bottom out of 63.5 grams. Next, we also have another switch from NovelKeys, the cream switches. These got really popular all of a sudden due to the Tfue Keycult build, and due to its popularity, it is also sold by a lot of vendors, with the price being at 65 cents per switch, with the spring weight having an actuation of 55 grams and bottom out of 17 grams. Lastly, we have the Gateron Ink Black switches, and these are probably the switch you'll find in most sound tests. It's also sold by a lot of vendors, and it is priced at 75 cents per switch, with the spring weight having some discrepancy on various websites. Some sites have the bottom out at 70 grams while others have at 80 grams. When I tested them myself, they felt heavier than the cream switches, so I'm going to guess that it is closer to the 80 grams. So starting off with the best value switch award, I think this one's pretty clear on who the winner is. At just 25 cents per switch, Gateron Yellows are a killer deal that you cannot pass on. For a pack of 70 switches, it comes out to just $17.50 compared to $52.50 for Gateron Ink Blacks. And Cherry MX Blacks are also a close runner-up at around 35 cents per switch, coming at around $24.50 for a pack of 70. Next, for the Smoothest Switch award, it was actually a pretty close race. When Lubed with Krytox 205 Grey 0, they all felt pretty smooth, but the winner came out to be the C3 Tangerines. The Tangerines had the least amount of friction, with the NovelKeys Dry Yellows coming in a close second. Among those two, and adding the Gateron Ink Blacks, I think you can't really go wrong with any of them, as they all feel pretty nice and smooth. For the best sounding switch award, this one might vary from my liking to yours, so take a listen for yourself to all the switches and choose your favorite sounding switch. Did you pick your favorite yet? Okay, one more time. My favorite has to be the Gateron Ink Black switches, as they sound super nice to me. I also like how the cream switches sound and NovelKeys Dry Yellows, along with the C3 Tangerines. So before we have my best overall switch award, we have the honorable mention award, which is my second place award. So can I get a drum roll please? The winner of the honorable mention switch award is the Cherry MX Black switch. Although it isn't the smoothest switch, Cherry MX Blacks have a special place in my heart. It was the first switch that I had in my switch tester, and I took it around with me everywhere, playing with it whenever I was bored. It might be due to those memories, but Cherry MX Black switches are just the switch that I always liked. The cherry housing produces really nice clack that you don't get in other switches. In addition, at the price of around 35 cents per switch, this is a pretty good deal. That being said, the spring is super heavy, so you probably have to swap it out with something else. Finally, we have the best overall switch award. So can I get a drum roll once again? The winner of the best overall switch is representing all the JWK recolors, the NovelKeys Dry Yellow switches. This switch is among the top in all my rankings in sound and feel. It was honestly a close race between the NovelKeys Dry Yellows and the Gateron Ink Black switches, but the reason why the Dry Yellow switches won is due to its price. Coming in at 55 cents per switch, it is more affordable than the super expensive Gateron Ink Black switches at 75 cents per switch. In a perfect world where Gateron Ink Blacks are a lot cheaper, I'll probably get them over the Dry Yellows. But due to the price, I would have to give the best overall switch to the NovelKeys Dry Yellows or any other JWK linear out there. That being said, I think that all of these linear switches on today's list are super solid, and you can't go wrong with any of them for your build. Thanks for making it to the end, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's video, feel free to subscribe as I have more fun mechanical keyboard videos planned for the future. And come interact with me on my socials linked down below. Until next time, stay safe and take care.